10 team, 3 wide receiver, Superflex, half PPR mock draft. Going to be going pick by pick, and let's get into it. My 101 in this format is Jamar Chase. Obviously, if you go in the direction of Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, those are great picks as well. But given the fact that it is 10 team, there is a lot of depth at the quarterback position, and not to mention the fact that it is 3 wide receiver. And with Chase, wide receiver won last season by more than 4 half PPR points per game. He was a little bit more boom bust than Justin Jefferson, who finished as the wide receiver 2, but Chase's boom weeks just won you your week. Which brings me to the 102, and as I mentioned before, that is Josh Allen, which makes the third pick Lamar Jackson. Pick 4, really it's between Jaden Daniels and Justin Jefferson. The reason that I am going to lead Jefferson here is there are a tier of 8 wide receivers that I am very, very comfortable with. And then there's a tier of 11 wide receivers that I like quite a bit. And I don't want to miss out on anyone in that top 11. But if I do pass on Jefferson here, I am potentially missing out on that top 8. And that top 8 is just a little bit too important for me in these 3 wide receiver formats. So I'm going to go ahead and lock him in here. Now, the next pick, I could go CeeDee Lamb here just kind of by that same accord, but I will lean in the direction of Jaden Daniels. Obviously, his ceiling is as high as anyone, right? And he had a great rookie season. They add Deebo Samuel. They improved the offensive line. So all signs are definitely pointing up. However, if you are a little bit nervous about a sophomore slump, like I totally get it. We saw the same thing with CJ Stroud here last season when he was getting pushed up to like QB5 or QB6. But the reason I'm a little bit more confident in Jaden Daniels is just because the floor his rushing provides. Pick 6 here. This is going to be CeeDee Lamb for me. I think CeeDee Lamb is in for a fantastic season. I've toyed with the fact of pushing him over Justin Jefferson, and I don't doubt anybody who wants to do that because we know Dak is going to air it out a ton. And as good as the system is in Minnesota, if you're a little bit nervous about JJ McCarthy and you've been kind of getting some mixed reports throughout camp, I totally understand that. But this time last year, were any of us all that excited about Sam Darnold? So we've just seen what Kevin O'Connell does for these quarterbacks, and Jefferson seems to be one of those guys that really is QB proof. So again, CeeDee is a great pick here. Now, this is where I'm going to start to go in the direction of the running backs. You see Sleeper here has Saquon as the RB3. I still have him as my RB1. I think with that top trio of running backs, there really is no going wrong. I think sometimes we're maybe just splitting hairs a little bit too much between Barkley, Bijan, and Gibbs. I'm building out each team as if they were my own. I wanted to get away from the computer algorithm where sometimes they'll load up like 5 running backs in a row, or they'll go crazy on quarterbacks in, Superflex 10 team when maybe there's not actually going to be 14 that go off in your first 2 rounds of your draft. So that's kind of the whole idea behind this build. Now at pick 10, this is where it gets a little bit interesting for me because I do have Puka as my wide receiver 4. Now, every day that goes by and Stafford's not fully 100%, it does make me a little bit more nervous. However, I do want to make sure I lock in a wide receiver here, and I am interested in actually locking in a quarterback as well. I do think there's a pretty clear-cut tier of 5 at the quarterback position that I am targeting this season. Now, we always make tiers every single year, right? And those tiers can kind of go out the window as the season goes on, and somebody who was ranked QB 14 ends up as the QB 5. Think of like Baker the last couple seasons outperforming. Sam Darnold, you get the idea. But going into this draft with the strategy, I am very confident that Joe Burrow is going to be throwing the ball a ton. He's got elite weapons. We know he's an elite player, and their defense is just absolutely horrible. Now, I will stick with Puka here as my wide receiver 4. And just kind of hope that Stafford is good to go because I think assuming he is just going to get peppered with targets. We know that Stafford and McVay like to hyperlock into that number 1, whereas Devontae, maybe he's going to get a little bit more red zone work, but Puka's not really, been a touchdown scorer over his career anyway. So I just think, if his touchdowns do spike, we could be looking at a season, whether this be this season or next, where he ends up being the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. Now, team 9, which is the Gibbs team here. So a couple ways I can go. I could take the last quarterback in that tier of 5, and I could go with Jalen Hurts. So that's an intriguing option. But again, what I've stressed about the top 8 tier of wide receivers and then down to the top 11 tier of wide receivers, I know that I'm going to miss out completely on that tier by the time, my next pick comes around. So let's just go ahead and lock in who I have as my QB5 and Malik Neighbors. I think Neighbors is in for a fantastic season, right? Like his quarterback play was totally atrocious last year. I know Russ is kind of in the sunset of his career. Maybe he doesn't play the whole season, but we saw in the preseason game how good Jackson Dart looked. And I am totally team Jackson Dart. Like I've been all over this guy since high school. I mean, I was a fan of him when he signed with USC, and then obviously once Lincoln Riley took over and we brought in Caleb Williams, I was like, okay, this is much better. But just following him at Ole Miss has been fun as well. So I was very happy to see the Giants lock in on him. Let's just say that Russ is completely atrocious out the gate, and they don't think that the rookie is ready. He would be ranked number 1 or number 2 each and every week if Jameis Winston does get those starts. So if we see Jameis start at any point this season, Neighbors is going to go absolutely insane. So moving over to team 8, again, going to be sticking with the wide receiver position, going with how I have the next guy ranked, and that is Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I initially had Brian Thomas Jr. over Amon-Ra St. Brown, and obviously there's no arguing that maybe the ceiling with BTJ is a little bit higher, but with Amon-Ra, just that very stable, steady production. We see it year over year. He's obviously locked in with Jared Goff. And so I'm starting that team with Bijan and Amon-Ra. It's just two absolute anchors at the position. Now with the Saquon team, that is actually an interesting opportunity here to stack him with Jalen Hurts. So that's maybe just a little bit too rich for my blood. My opinion on stacking is this early in drafts, it's just a little bit too risky for me. I get it, right? You're going to be getting all the points in that offense. So if that's something that you're in on, I'm not going to try to talk you out of that at all, because you're going to be in for some monster weeks. And obviously those guys are going to be great. But let's go with the guy who I was just speaking of in Brian Thomas Jr. So BTJ, obviously an incredible breakout in the second half of the season, or really, once they started throwing him more than 10 plus targets per game. And a lot of that was with Mac Jones. And I understand people that are in the camp that it's like, hey, he didn't have that connection with Lawrence and it was Mac Jones. And, my answer to that is like, are we really that excited about Mac Jones? Like, I know Trevor Lawrence has not lived up to his like generational prospect hype, but like, are any of us like thinking that Mac Jones is like better than him? And now they get this huge upgrade at play caller with Liam Cohen. They shipped off Evan Ingram. Christian Kirk's gone now. Obviously, they bring in, the Heisman sensation who's going to get a lot of targets as well. But I just think, with those two guys, it's going to be hyper focused. And I think this scheme is going to be very good. So I'm all in on BTJ at this point. And then my last wide receiver in that tier of 8 is Nico Collins. So I could be looking in that direction. But the fact that I already got CeeDee Lamb here, I think this is a good opportunity to take Jalen Hurts. Now with Jaden Daniels, I can understand if this is where you want to start hammering that second tier of running back. And I think Christian McCaffrey would be an intriguing option. But again, building out all these teams as if, they were each my own, I am going to go with Nico Collins here. And it is interesting that Sleeper has Drake London over Nico Collins. So just watch that in your drafts. And if you want to push Drake London over Nico Collins, like that is totally, completely like fine to do. I'm all in on Drake London in this year. I think he's going to have a fantastic year. But, before Nico got hurt last year, we already saw that he was like the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. He was just on a tear, and that was sharing the field with Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell. Now they bring in Christian Kirk, who I think in the beginning of the season might actually have some like deeper PPR appeal. But the two Iowa State guys, I'm very high on. I think Higgins and Noel were really nice additions to this team. But I'm less afraid of that group of guys as I was about Diggs and Dell. So I think Nico is just going to continue to be the focal point. And with Joe Mixon banged up, like they're going to have to throw it a ton too. So very, very in on that start with Daniels and Nico. Now, team 4, the Jefferson team. This is where I'm going to go to the running back position. Christian McCaffrey is who I have as my RB4. Now, CMC is, I don't know if he's like totally polarizing at this point. I think most people are starting to come around on him. I will say, like in best ball a few months ago, he was like an early round 2 pick, and now he's consistently like number 7 off the board. So I guess in that format, it's a little bit more risk reward anyway. So I get that. But with the Niners, it's like now the coach is saying Ayuk might not start until week 6. And we've got like the potential contract situation / injury with Jawan Jennings. And it's like Pearsall's been a little bit banged up. And I think Kittle's going to be an awesome play this year. But Niners have such an easy schedule. I mean, they have projected to be the easiest schedule in the league. And I think they're just going to ride McCaffrey. So I'm starting to get a little bit more aggressive on where I'm drafting him and feeling a little bit more confident about that. Now we know this can completely fall flat. And if something bad happens, we're all going to be kicking ourselves, but we can't doubt the upside with CMC. Now with team 3, the Lamar team, this is where that mini tier of wide receiver starts to come into play. The Drake London, AJ Brown, Ladd McConkey tier for me. Now, I still kept Ladd as my wide receiver 11 when I talked about that tier of the top 11 wide receivers. There's just no one at 12 that like really stands out to me that I'm willing to push Ladd down with the addition of Keenan Allen. Like it's been T Higgins for me. It's been, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm still continuing to put him there, but I do think London and AJ Brown are kind of settling into their own little mini tier. So the thought process behind that is because I started with Lamar, I don't want to potentially get shut out on any of those guys. Should team 2 and team 1, that well dries up with those two teams. So I will go with Drake London here. Again, I talked about it previously, but I think London is in for an incredible year. Team 2, the Josh Allen team, probably a similar story. Running back is interesting, but again, there's so many guys in this running back tier that I would like to have. Achane, Henry, Genty. I'm willing to wait on that and just take my guy in AJ Brown. I know AJ Brown was a disappointment last season, being injured, but he was still the wide receiver 12 in points per game. He was only a point behind Amon-Ra and Puka in that category, and he was half a point ahead of Drake London. Like we know he's a top 5 receiver in the NFL on an elite team. The only thing that's really working against him is Saquon, elite defense, Devontae Smith, low volume. And if you look at the splits between AJ Brown's first halves and second halves, they're just like astronomical because they don't need him. But with him, it's like the contingent upside. Should the defense take a step back or anything happens that they have to throw more, you can be looking at, a top 5 guy. So I'm definitely excited about Brown. Now, team 1, you'll notice I haven't gone in on the next tier of quarterbacks. So that is a thought here because I don't want to get completely shut out at the position. But for me, Patrick Mahomes and Baker Mayfield are kind of in that next tier by themselves. And I don't necessarily want to be the first person to take that tier. I kind of want to play a little bit of chicken. So let's see at the running back position. My next guy I have ranked. So that person is Devon Achane. Wow, mixing Achane with Chase is going to lead to some incredible spike weeks. So that is interesting. And I could go quarterback, like I said, wide receiver. I could go with Ladd here. So that's tough actually, because typically I like to go a little bit more robust on the wide receiver side because it is a 3 wide receiver league, but Derrick Henry is kind of staring me at the face. I think I would be kicking myself if I took Ladd and Keenan has a little bit bigger role than I thought about and Henry was on the board. So I'm going to go with Derrick Henry here. And so far, I love the start of that team. I will say we'll see what happens at the quarterback position. Every league's different, right? Like some leagues, especially if you're in a 12-team league, these boards are going to look a lot different. They're just going to fly off the boards. But in 10-team leagues, some leagues, they just take them all up front, but know your league, right? When you're doing these mock drafts and try to build out accordingly. And I will say, as you mock draft, it is pretty easy on Sleeper to just open up a blank board and kind of click through and you can pick and choose how you think some of your league mates are going to draft. I like to text our league mates and say, hey, who are you thinking to pick 1? And start to kind of fill out your board and we get very into it. Let's go back to team 2, the Allen, AJ Brown team. So I like this team quite a bit. I'm not going to go back to the well at quarterback with any of those like top 5 guys. I'm probably just going to wait because the position is so deep. But this allows me to take the last player in that running back tier for me, and that's Ashton Genty. Obviously not the best preseason game, but let's just not overreact. But I will say I haven't really taken a lot of Genty this year because some people have him ranked as like RB4, RB5, and like because I have him at 7, I'm just not foreseeing getting a lot of him. But hey, I understand that, if you're all in on him, by all means. Now, with team 3, Lamar Jackson, Drake London, this presents a really nice opportunity to go in on Brock Bowers here. So now with Bowers, it'll be interesting because I think even in 10-team Superflex, there's a good chance he sneaks into the second round. But you always have to realize, like with the 5 quarterbacks off the board, someone who's a mid-second round pick typically in 10 team is going to get pushed down to like the 2-3 turns. I would have thought about going in on him earlier, but I talked about those tier of running backs that I didn't want to miss out on. And the fact that like, if you wait an extra round, you can still get George Kittle. Like there's a little bit of cat and mouse with Bowers. So, but in this build, I like that here quite a bit. Now this team, Jefferson, McCaffrey, I think this is the time where it's appropriate to go in on Ladd McConkey. Now I am playing a little bit of chicken at the quarterback position, but for me, Ladd was just too good to pass up on. Now team 5, Jaden Daniels, Nico Collins, really like that start. Could think about Trey McBride here. I don't know exactly where he's going to go in people's home leagues, but there is no doubting the fact that if his touchdowns increase just a little bit, I mean, by gosh, he can easily be the tight end one given his volume and what type of playmaker he is. Now, with the wide receiver position, this is kind of where that tier break starts for me. I said I had Higgins at the top, followed by JSN. Interesting that Marvin Harrison is ranked so high on Sleeper. I have him as like wide receiver 18 or 19, and even that's a little bit aggressive for consensus, but Sleeper has him at wide receiver 12. I mean, I guess, right? There's no reason he can't. He was selected at like the 1-2 turn last season. If he and Kyler's rapport improves quite a bit, there's no arguing his talent or his pedigree coming from college. So by all means, but it's just a little too rich for my blood. So let's look at the running back position. This for me, this is where my tier kicks off. I have a little mini tier with Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs, and that's actually growing to Chase Brown as well. So I think because I don't have a running back, just grabbing a stud like JT, had a very nice end to last season. We know the talent is there. We've seen him reach the mountaintops before. I think this offense probably isn't going to be able to throw the ball super effectively. So I think they're going to lean on him in the run game. And, obviously we're going to have to deal with hopefully no injuries with him, but we know given his resume, that's definitely a possibility. So a little bit scary there, but no doubting his upside. Now the next team, team 6, CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Hurts, could go in the direction of the running back here, which is probably what I'll do. I mentioned that little tier with Taylor and Josh Jacobs. So I'm going to go with that here. Now at this point, Saquon Barkley, Brian Thomas, again, not super interested in kicking off that wide receiver tier. So I think this is where I'll go in on Patrick Mahomes. There's no doubt that Patrick Mahomes can bounce back and reach the mountaintops again and finish top 3 and all of the above if he does have to throw more, right? Like it's never a question about his quarterback play. It's just a question of how much they actually need him. But I will say it a little bit more concerned at this point in the offseason than we were a couple months ago when it wasn't super clear if Rishi Rice was going to get suspended. Now Hollywood's kind of banged up, but we'll see. And the thing with Mahomes is even if he has like another stinker of a season, it's still probably going to be top 10. Now I know that's not the greatest thing, but in Superflex, that stability is definitely a little bit more valuable. Team 8, Bijan, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So really like this team. So looking back at the running back, I mentioned the next person in this tier is Chase Brown for me. So I think that would be an interesting direction to go. Maybe lean into like a little bit more of a robust RB and kind of use an anchor wide receiver with St. Brown. So that's a good idea. I can also go with Trey McBride, another interesting one. But I will say because Chase Brown is down here, if this was like a normal draft and someone's just kind of looking at the computer rankings, I would probably wait on him. But I told you guys that I was building out these teams as if they were each my own. So I will take Chase Brown. And now team 9, this is where I would probably entertain the idea of Trey McBride because my thought is that team 10 having 2 picks between me would probably not pass on him. And there's a lot of guys in the wide receiver tier. There's a few guys in the running back tier. Quarterback, he's probably not going to take another quarterback because they already have Joe Burrow at the top. So I would go with McBride here. Now, team 10, oh, such a bummer. I just got sniped on Trey McBride. I thought he was going to make it back to me. Nope. Sorry, bud. I'm going to go with someone who I think a lot of people have ranked above Kyren Williams anyway, and that's Bucky Irving. Like, I know I'm not necessarily the high guy on Bucky from like a fantasy perspective, just because I have him ranked a few spots below some people. And I know some people are like all in on Bucky, which I think he's going to be great. I think he's awesome. I think he's so fun. He's elusive, does all the right things. Like, I get it. Right. So no fault if you want to take Bucky a little over ADP. Now, I think it's probably too early to go on George Kittle, but that is an interesting idea, right? Because I know that Kittle's not going to make it back to me. So that's a thought. I could go with like an Marion Hampton, James Cook, grab another running back here. But I think because there's going to be so many wide receivers taken between now and my next pick, I'm just going to go with who I have as my top ranked wide receiver in T. Higgins. We know T. Higgins last year on a points per game basis was just absolutely elite. He's always struggled with health, and I know that's a little bit risky mixing him with Puka and stacking him with Joe Burrow, but I will say, like, if you're looking for that elite stack wide receiver to quarterback, and that's kind of how you play, I think that's kind of an intriguing option. Maybe a little rich for my blood, but hey, if you ain't first, you're last. That's kind of how a lot of people like to play, as corny as that sounds. Anyway, so the next pick here, I'm going to go with my number 7 ranked quarterback in Baker Mayfield. Baker, just a complete career revelation, revitalization, whatever the correct word is to use. Been great to see. He's so fun to watch. Obviously, Godwin's banged up, but they bring in Emeka Ibuka, who is just flying up my rankings. And I think I have him now back to back with Godwin, or maybe I pushed him above Godwin. I'm just all in on Ibuka. I'm sure a lot of you guys have been watching Ohio State over the years and just know that this guy is just so special and just such an absolutely great person and great teammate in a world where people are transferring and people are complaining. Ibuka is the all-time leading receiver at Ohio State, and he's never been the one. And you ever think he complained? Do you ever think he did anything other than block his butt off and support his team? Absolutely not. So I think Ibuka goes into the perfect situation where he's surrounded by Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. He doesn't have to, he can kind of just go back into that role. So sky's the limit for him. I think Baker's in for another really good season. So for me here, I did mention before kind of leaning into a robust running back approach because I already have Bijan and Chase Brown. So maybe what I'll do, because Kyron has fell, I will take Kyron Williams here. I think if you like doing that, that is kind of a really fun start to this draft, right? Like I'm going to be starting all 3 of those guys because Kyron or whomever is going to be in my flex spot. So I'm going to have a really big positional advantage at running back. And the fact that I already have Amon-Ra, if I can find some value late at the wide receiver position, which I think there's a ton of this year. I mean, we're probably not going to get to those picks, but guys like Matthew Golden, Ricky Pearsall, like even Jacoby Myers, like so many days, Chris Olave, like there's just so much value late that I think I can probably build out a pretty good team. Now, for this one here, I think the idea of George Kittle is just getting too much fun to pass up on. I kind of like the look of this fully Neapolitan style team. I've got Saquon, BTJ, Patrick Mahomes, and George Kittle. So a couple of older guys, few older guys other than BTJ, I guess, but I think that's a pretty intriguing start. Now, Team 6, CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Hurts, Josh Jacobs, not going to go back to the well at quarterback. Let's take a look at the running backs. My highest ranked running back right now is still James Cook. Now that every day that goes by, the contract situation is getting a little bit scarier. I have yet to push him below Hampton, but Hampton is right on his heels, and I think that will probably happen the farther we go along. Now, if you're watching this and he signed, this afternoon after I recorded this, that's great, and you can just push him up and draft him with confidence. Now, Team 5, Jaden Daniels, Nico Collins, Jonathan Taylor, probably want to go back to the well at wide receiver, and there is a few guys that I like in this tier. I'm getting more and more in on Jackson Smith and Jigba. I actually haven't changed his ranking all season. He's kind of been my wide receiver 13, kind of just sitting steady. I know they added Cooper Kupp. I know the offense is going to be completely different. I know they bring in Sam Darnold, but if Darnold found his confidence and if this offense clicks, like JSN is going to be the clear number 1, maybe not so much in the beginning with Cooper Kupp. He's shown that he's able to earn a lot of targets, but if Kupp misses time like he's been doing, unfortunately, throughout the last few years of his career, JSN is just going to get loaded up with targets, and we know he's an immensely talented player. Now, Team 4, probably where I should start looking at quarterback. Now, I'm not 100% certain teams 2 and 3 will go in on quarterback, but I know Team 1 probably will. So I probably want to lock in a quarterback here. Now, there's a bunch of guys that do intrigue me, and I would play the ADP game because I actually have Jared Goff ranked the highest of this group. It's so close with Goff and Purdy and Dak and Kyler and Caleb and Justin Herbert. So maybe I won't do that. Maybe I should just wait. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to do what I would do, right? And I would think that in my home league, Jared Goff would probably make it back. So let's look at other positions. And I've got Jefferson, I've got Christian McCaffrey, I've got Lad McConkey. So maybe what I'll do is, this is kind of feeling like a little bit of an upside team. So I will take Tyreek Hill here. So obviously with Tyreek and CMC, we know the drill, right? They're older, there's some risk. They can be top top end position players, or they can kind of fall off. With Ladd, it's like, okay, if Keenan Allen steps back into that number 2 role or number 1 role, like there can be a target crunch with that with Jefferson if JJ McCarthy isn't good. But I kind of like the way that this team is shaping up if they are firing on all cylinders. Now, team 3, Lamar Jackson, Drake London, Brock Bowers, probably want to be interested in a running back here. So I'm going to go with my highest ranked guy, kind of a little mini tier break, and that's Marion Hampton. I think Marion Hampton is just in for a massive workload every week and day that Najee misses more time. That's more time he's spending with the first team. And this kid is just going to be too good to keep off the field. So when Najee was healthy on July 3rd, my assumption was Najee was going to be extremely annoying in keeping Hampton off the field because he gets the 3 yards that Harbaugh likes. He doesn't fumble the ball, all of the little things he does. And eventually Hampton would kind of take over in that second half, very much like a buy low candidate. But now, if he's going to be starting the season, I think it's just wheels up for him. Now, team 2, Josh Allen, AJ Brown, Ashton Jeanty, definitely a bunch of different directions I can go in. Probably wouldn't double dip at quarterback at this point. Could go to the running back position. There's a lot of guys I like here too, but I will just go ahead and lock in Garrett Wilson. So Garrett Wilson, I'm like, I've been kind of afraid to draft him this year, and he's one of my favorite players. Love the guy. I think he's awesome. He got paid. He deserved it. But we've seen year over year him just get this like monster volume. And, last year was different, and he finished as like the wide receiver 11 or 10. And, it's still, if for whatever reason, it kind of felt worse than that. So he does make me nervous playing with Justin Fields, but I don't know. I think he's just, who else are they going to be throwing the ball to? Who's their number 2? Who's their number 3? And I know they want to be run heavy, but they're also not like a good enough team that they're just going to be like shutting teams out and being able to run the ball a lot. So I think they're going to have to throw quite a bit. So let's go with Wilson here. Now, team 1, definitely going to lock in a quarterback here. I might even double dip at quarterback. I don't know if that's something I would necessarily do, but I don't know. We'll see with that. And I actually have Jared Goff as my number 1 ranked still on the board. I think the stability he provides at the position is too good to pass up. Now, at the other quarterbacks, I could go with like a little bit more boom bust with like a Kyler Murray or even like a Caleb Williams or Drake May. Brock Purdy obviously offers a lot of stability, but because I only have 1 wide receiver, I think I would just be kind of playing with fire. So the next ranked guy that I have right now is technically Devontae Adams, but I kind of gave my spiel with Puka Nacua and the Stafford injury, so I'm a little bit weary about that, but let's just stick with him here and hope everything gets solved, because I think he can be in for a nice, really nice red zone role in this offense. And we know his ability to score touchdowns, and, he still looked fantastic last year. So I'm going to take a bet on the talented player on a great offense with a great play caller. Now, swinging back around, this is probably where I'd start looking to get my QB2. So my next ranked player is actually Dak Prescott. It's interesting because Sleeper has Dak buried down quite a bit. And I know in the beginning of the offseason, Dak was kind of like in that QB 15-ish range. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we look at Dak's career year over year finishes, and every time he's healthy, like he's kind of an elite quarterback. So I think people are coming around on that, and especially the fact that Pickens has been looking really good in camp. I think that's a great addition, and they're going to have to throw the ball a ton. We don't really know how that running game is going to shake out. So I really like Dak this year. Now, if I'm team 3 here, I don't know if I'm going to be feeling the heat too much to go in on quarterback, just because in my mind, there could be a big run. So maybe would I succumb to the peer pressure and take a quarterback here? Yeah, let's actually go with Terry McLaurin there. Not super confident in that. And if I'm team 4, I am fist pumping because I still have the pick of a bunch of quarterbacks that I really like. And I'm going to go with Brock Purdy here. Now, that stack with Christian McCaffrey is a little bit interesting, but I'm going to be getting all the points. And what I mentioned, being a little bit hesitant of stacks when it's like my first 2 picks. Now, I understand within the first 5 picks, it's still pretty rich, but seems he's going to get a lot of passing touchdowns from Purdy too. He's obviously going to get a lot of rushing touchdowns. Purdy's going to throw a lot to his other players too. So I think that's a stack that I would be fairly comfortable with. Now, team 5, Jaden Daniels team, Nico Collins, Jonathan Taylor, JSN, might want to be looking at another running back here. So I will go with my top ranked running back in Ken Walker. Now, team 6 kind of loaded up with running back the last 2 picks. So probably going to be looking back in the direction of wide receiver. For me, I am going to go with Mike Evans here. Again, just probably can just bank on 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns like we see year over year. Now, Team 7, this is my Neapolitan-style team, so I could literally go in any direction except for tight end. Please don't select a second tight end if you selected George Kittle or Brock Bowers or Trey McBride. I know there's a lot of thought process out there where it's like, select 2 tight ends and like one's going to hit. And it's like, I don't necessarily subscribe to that anyway, unless it's like a super deep league, but especially not if it's like George Kittle, because okay, let's say Kittle gets hurt. You just go to the waiver wire and you pick up like Dallas Goedert, or I'm sure by then Dalton Kincaid will be a waiver wire guy, or you get the idea. Like, don't clog up those roster spots. So, I could go back to the quarterback position here because I said with Patrick Mahomes, he is very stable. So that allows me to take someone like a Kyler, who's maybe a little bit more boom bust, a Bo Nix, who I'm not super in on. But so I will go with Caleb here just because I already have the stability of Mahomes. Now, teammate, I'm definitely feeling the heat to take a quarterback. So I think with this build here, I've got 3 running backs already. I've got the Amon-Ra start. So I will go in on Kyler Murray. Can go in a couple different directions, starting Gibbs, Neighbors, McBride, Baker. I guess that's another Neapolitan start. Nice. I like that. I can't decide if I like that more, if I like the appeal or the visual of just like 3 or 4 wide receivers to start, just kind of being like super clean, and then a couple running backs. But please don't like do your boards based on like how pretty they look. I know you guys wouldn't do that, and I would of course never do that. But sometimes it is just kind of a little bit satisfying to look at. Now, at the running back position, I still have Kamara one spot above Travion Henderson, and then I have Breece Hall a spot below those guys. So I will go with Kamara just year over year. We know he's going to catch a ton of passes. We know he's not going to score a bunch of touchdowns, but they're going to just check it down to him a ton. So at Team 10, this is probably where I would be looking at grabbing my second quarterback to pair with Joe Burrow. A lot of guys I really like here. Bo Nix is interesting. Drake May is interesting. And if you know me really well and you say, why is Bo Nix all of a sudden interesting? He's not that interesting. Just I understand if he is to you, but he's just not someone I'm putting the chips in that basket for this year. For someone who I am is Drake May. I think the sky's the absolute limit for this kid. I think he's just going to be an absolute star, and his rushing provides a floor that is not talked about enough. Devontae Smith ranked as my wide receiver 20, and I get it. I know he's pushed down further than that, but I don't know. It's, you just look at his career finishes, right? Like wide receiver 30, 20, 10, 29. And last year, he was the wide receiver 17 in points per game. And I talked about this with AJ Brown. It's like, okay, if they have to throw the ball more, we know how talented he is. We know how great of the offense this is. So I kind of like him here. He definitely offers some stability, someone who I prefer more as my wide receiver 3. Now, Team 9, Gibbs, Neighbors, Trey McBride, Baker Mayfield, Alvin Kamara. I think it's probably wise to go with another wide receiver here. Well, Marvin Harrison doesn't really make sense because I don't want to pair him with Trey McBride. Especially on games where like Kyler runs one in and James Conner runs in 2, and you're like, okay, like I got like 9 points from those guys. Like that's too much for me. And so like choose your stacks wisely is kind of all I'm going to say. But at running back, man, I can really just kind of lean into running back here. If you guys know me, like this isn't how I typically draft my teams, but I don't know. There's just so much value. I'm going to go Travion Henderson. I think he's just going to be an absolute superstar. We saw what he did in the preseason game, just taking the first one to the house for 100 yards. It's like, okay, yep, this kid's the truth. Obviously, you guys have probably been watching him over the years in college and just are over the moon about him like I am. So can't say enough good things. Now, this teammate, I will probably go with a wide receiver here. I'm going to go with my highest ranked guy in Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, Team 7, I've already got 2 quarterbacks and I've already got my tight end, so I can either go in the direction of running back or wide receiver. I would prefer to go wide receiver, but let's take a look at who's available and who's my top ranked player. That would be DK Metcalf. I think DK Metcalf is kind of an intriguing player this year. Like on the one hand, we know how physically dominant he is. We know how great he can be when he's rolling. We know Aaron Rodgers likes to hyper lock onto his number 1, but there still are like a few things that scare me in play. Obviously, they want to be like super run heavy, but with Aaron Rodgers is like definitely more of like a perfectionist and a technician, and like appreciates things like nuanced route running, like especially last year working with his guy Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson's, like, whereas DK Metcalf is kind of more of like a bully athlete. So I do worry that if he's kind of in the wrong spot, I don't want to like take anything away from him, but I could see maybe some frustrations, but on the other side, it's like, who else are they throwing it to this year? So I like DK. He's someone I can definitely see taking a shot on in leagues this year. Now with this team, got a couple really good running backs, got a couple really good wide receivers. So I'm just going to go with Bo Nix here. I think at this point, like, he'll be off the boards regardless. So I don't want to push him down too much further. And team 5 might be feeling the heat a little bit to take a second quarterback. Team 4 has one quarterback. Team 3 has one quarterback, and team 1 has one quarterback. So I'm going to operate under the assumption that 3 quarterbacks are gone. So let's take a look at the next tier. Herbert, Love, Fields. So it does dry up a little bit. So, and I'm going to take Jordan Love. Now, Jordan Love obviously dealing with a left hand thing going on, but I think it sounds like he's going to be good to go for week 1. Now, at team 4, I'm going to take the top quarterback I have ranked on my board and go with Justin Herbert here. Now, team 3, again, probably operating under the assumption that team 1 is going to take a quarterback. And this might be the point in your drafts where you start to see third quarterbacks flying off the board. So I'm just going to have a lot of fun with this one and take Justin Fields to pair with Lamar Jackson. So you look at this team and it's like, you're going to have some crazy weeks. Like if Bowers has a 2-touchdown game and Lamar goes off and Justin Fields goes off, Terry catches a couple. I know you can kind of make this case about any team, but this one feels like if I'm facing against it, I'm going to be sweating the night before. Now, team 2, Josh Allen, A.J. Brown, Ashton Shinty, Garrett Wilson. Really like this team quite a bit. Let's take a peek back at the running back position. And I have Breece Hall as my highest ranked running back. Now, I'm a little bit weary to pair him with Garrett Wilson. So maybe what I'll do is I will just go with Chuba Hubbard here. Who I believe is my next ranked guy. It's either he or James Conner. I typically opt for Conner when I'm on the clock just because, I don't know, I just really like James Conner. And when he's healthy, he's top 12. But Chuba had a great season, and I think this team is improving a ton. So I don't blame anyone for pushing him up a little bit more. Now, team 1, Chase, Etienne, Henry, Goff, Adams. Probably going to go back to the well at my second quarterback. But as I look around, every team already has 2 except for 1. So I could play that game and hope 1 comes back to me. But if we start to see third quarterbacks fly off the board, that makes me just a little bit too nervous for comfort. So I do have it as like a little tier break with CJ Stroud and Trevor Lawrence before like the JJ McCarthy tier comes into play. So I will just kind of pick my preference between the 2, and it's close, right? I don't know. I think maybe we just got a little too ahead of ourselves pushing up CJ Stroud so high last year, but I think I'm just a little bit more confident in him. But again, doesn't make too much a difference to me. Let me know if you guys like this format. It is a little bit more time consuming than just having the computer auto draft, but hopefully this is helpful, and we'll talk to you in the next one.